If I could have you say and spell your name, so make sure we get it right.
Jim Weiss, Jimweiss.
Okay. And if you would mind, kind of paint the picture of what your life was like before the Freedom Center.
Okay. Um, it was totally out of control. I was either drinking or I was thinking of drinking. I was wanting to drink. Um, by some standards, my life was very, I might have been considered high maintenance. I went to work every day, brought home a paycheck every day, but it had slipped to the point over the last 4 or 5 years where I would go to bed every night, 10, 11 o'clock, and swear I wasn't going to drink the next morning or the next day. And the next morning by 6 a.m., I was drinking again. And it got to the point where I would drink every break I had from work, lunch break, afternoon break, and as soon as I got home, I just continued it all night long. And number of evenings where I would get home early and start preparing dinner for my wife and black out and wake up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning in bed, not remembering that she had come home. I had finished cooking dinner and served the dinner and cleaned the dishes. And I would literally go downstairs and look at the condition of the kitchen, and I could tell whether I'd cleaned it up or she had. So I know I had done it, but I had no recollection. So it was just complete unmanageability. It was scary. You know, I had heard people talk about with addiction that they talked about, you know, it leads to jails, institutions, or death. And all three of those sounded pretty appealing to me. But the thing that scared me the most was nothing ever changing, and that I would be in this pattern year after year after year with no idea of how to get off this cycle. And that was very, very scary. And as much as I managed to fool a lot of people for many years in the employment area, I finally got fired for drinking on the job. And that was my wake up. I got busted by management for sitting in my lunch break and drinking. And when I saw these people walking towards my truck, something clicked in me and I just said, I'm done. As much as I had probably tried 1,000 times, 5,000 times, something finally clicked in me and I just said, this was it. And that was the end of my drinking. That was my last drink. Went through a good amount of despair for about 3 or 4 days, really contemplating whether I still wanted to be on this planet or not. But something just finally woke up in me, and I picked up the phone and I reached out for help and was referred to the Freedom Center. Walked in here like I assume most people did, just very scared, not knowing what it was going to look like, but knowing that every attempt that I ever made to try to stop drinking never worked. You know, at the most I would quit for 2 days and convince myself that I could control it. Look, I just quit for 2 days. I didn't drink, but I was horrible for those 2 days. So walking in here, I had no idea what I was walking into. I had no experience with groups or therapists or counselors, but you know, what I experienced was everybody else in the group was just like me. And it almost kind of deflated my ego a little bit because I thought nobody drank like I drank and hurt like I and felt like I did. And I found out pretty darn quick that I was the same as everybody else and they were all the same as me. And I just walked into a place where I was never judged or criticized, and I was just loved and supported. And they pretty much held me up until I was able to see the good in me. And I remember the first night walking out after my very first group, and it was suggested by my counselor that I go home and write a gratitude list. And I thought that was the most absurd thing in the world. 50 years old, I'm unemployed, I'm in a marriage that isn't going to last a lot longer, and you want me to be grateful? And he just looked at me and said, yes. And as much as the idea didn't appeal to me, I was at a place where I would do whatever anybody suggested to me to do. So I went home, and next morning I said, okay, I found a little notebook, and I opened it up, and the only thing I could come up with was, I didn't drink yesterday. And every day I wrote in that book for over a year. And it always started with, I didn't drink today. And I finally stopped writing my gratitude list because at the end of the year I was writing for 15, 20, 25 minutes because I just found so much in my life to be grateful for. All the things I always had, I just never knew I had. And all the happiness and all the joy. It's given me the opportunity to change my career, to do what most people don't have the opportunity to do. And that's where I now have a job that I love to go to. And I would gladly do my job without pay if I could afford to go without pay. And it just allows me to continue to grow myself. It's allowed me to understand that there was always something inside of me that was guiding me. And although I spent my entire adult life running away from that, I found out it was always there. It never judged me. It would, and when I finally, uttered the words God or higher power or spirit, the only thing I heard back is, I've been waiting for you.
Do you want to talk about that job that's so special to you? The fact that it is at the place that helped
Absolutely.
get you back to you?
Absolutely. After losing my job as a result of my drinking, I found a few other jobs, but they just weren't, there was no meaning to them. They were work and they were a paycheck. And when I stepped into recovery, I stepped into it with both feet, hitting the ground and running. And I stepped into the 12-step community, and I got to a place where I just really love supporting people. And as part of my recovery, when I had mentioned that I went to a treatment program, well, the treatment program I went to was the Freedom Center. And I never left the Freedom Center. So after I completed the primary program, I just became a regular attendee at our aftercare alumni support group once a week. But what I also would do is I would come back on Monday nights and Friday nights and sit in with the group. And I would try to support other people early in recovery. As I built up 3 months, 4 months, 5, 6 months of sobriety, I realized I loved just giving back. I was so excited about recovery. It had changed so much of my life in even such a short period of time. So I started to try to do some service work around the Freedom Center, maybe help get some new members to 12-step meetings, or if nothing else, just sit down with them over a cup of coffee anytime they wanted to and talk to them about recovery. And what I realized is I just loved doing that. It just felt so good. And what I learned is when I worked with these people, it supported my recovery. So I hung around the Freedom Center, and I continued to be here for about 2 years, and there was something, 2, 3 years maybe, and there's something calling in me that just said, I'd love to do this for a living. But I didn't have the education background, and I didn't have the money to go back to school, and all I did was sit there and think of all the reasons why I couldn't become a drug or alcohol treatment counselor. But things just fell into my lap. People supported me financially. It allowed me to go back to school. And the biggest challenge to become a counselor is to find a facility that will...
Actually, hold the thought, I need to change.
Sure.